So, what happens when you combine a 3D action adventure game with rhythm based gameplay? I'll show you. 2020 was a pretty good year for gaming, all things considered. We got Animal Crossing, Last of Us Part 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Spelunky 2, Fall Guys, which was ultimately overshadowed by a game that came out 2 years prior. It wasn't bad. However, there was a little game that came out in August that has to be one of the most creative games that came out that year. 3 words: no straight roads. No Straight Roads is a 3D action adventure game with fun characters, colorful environments, and cool boss battles. However, this game has an interesting gimmick. All of the enemies in the game attack to the rhythm of the game's soundtrack. They attack to the beat. Pretty cool, right? I came across the game randomly one night scrolling through the PlayStation YouTube channel. The game had already caught my attention with its visually striking art style, but I was immediately intrigued when I learned about the rhythm-based combat system. As someone who's been getting into a lot of rhythm type games lately, considering I play a lot of Beat Saber and was addicted to the fast paced thumper at one point, I couldn't pass this game up. Plus, it was cool to be interested in a new IP for a change, considering gaming in 2020 was filled with remakes and sequels. I bought the game day one from the Epic's Game Store and was pleasantly surprised. In No Straight Roads, you play as one of the members of the indie rock band group known as Bunkbag Junction. You can play as either Mayday, the guitarist, or Zook, the drummer. Their goal? To take down the corrupt EDM music label known as No Straight Roads, or NSR for short. They have monopolized the entire music industry in the fictional high-tech metropolis of Vinyl City. After the two characters were rejected by the CEO of NSR, Tatiana, during an American Idol-like show, the pair decides to crash the top 5 artists' live performances who were signed with NSR in order to bring back rock to the people of Vinyl City. As plots go, it's pretty simple. However, this game has this EDM versus rock concept, and it takes that concept and runs with it. In a sense, No Straight Roads is really a boss rush game with a few platforming sections peppered in before each level. Vinyl City is divided into districts, and with each district being run by one of the 5 NSR artists. You beat that artist in that district, collect their vinyl at the end of each fight, and then move on to defeat the other artists. These boss battles are staged as duels and are definitely where the game shows the most creativity and charm. These boss battles are just so much fun to look at and to play the first time around. As for the second part of that sentence, I'll explain more on what I mean by that later. But first, let's talk about these boss battles. Man, where do I start? The cocky DJ Subatomic Supernova in this space-themed duel where you're trying to dodge planets? Or how about when you're facing the eccentric Eve in this illusion abstract art based setting that definitely feels like you're fighting in a music video from the 80s? Or what about when you're taking on this world's version of Hasini Miku, Seiyu, a virtual pop idol mermaid inside this aquatic vaporwave like digital world, where you're not only battling the pop idol herself, but also the programmers and the editing team and mocap team behind her. There's also this great visual joke during the boss battle with Seiyu, where you can actually see the editing guy adjust the brightness of the screen. It's some of the most fun I had in a video game in a while. There's just so much attention to detail and unique charm placed in every boss battle to make each one stand out individually. It's crazy how all insanely unique they are. My favorite would certainly have to be the fight against Yuno, the child pianist prodigy. It's an amazing boss battle with amazing visuals, but you also get this very emotional, subtle narrative during the fight about Yuno's relationship with her overprotective mother, and I seriously almost teared up by the end of it. Speaking of the game's visuals, the art style is just very visually appealing to me. It has this almost Saturday morning cartoon feel to me, especially when you're watching some of the 2D animated cutscenes from the game. It's very well animated. Netflix, make a cartoon about this now. Based on some interviews I was able to find, the game's art direction was inspired by Jet Set Radio, Psychonauts, and even Steven Universe, weirdly enough, and I can definitely see the DNA of each of those when I look at the game. And of course you can't have a music game without, music, and it's pretty fucking great. Since the main concept of the game is EDM versus rock, you essentially get two versions of each song. In addition, during each fight, there's also this meter at the top of the screen that shows who has the upper hand in the duel. During the duration of the fight, the soundtrack starts to slowly switch from the EDM version of the current track playing to the rock version to reflect Mayday and Zook winning the duel. During the fight, you can even hear the guitar and drums slowly start to kick in over time, and it's the coolest shit ever. It's a cool auditory clue to indicate how well the player is doing during the fight. I would definitely have to say the EDM version of Yuno's theme would certainly be a standout to me. It combines piano with EDM and it sounds fucking amazing. I mean, just listen to this. There's also a skill tree level up system as well, which I wasn't expecting in a game like this. You gain fans by beating each boss, and fans are essentially used as the game's experience points, which are then used to level up different abilities in the skill trees. There are 3 different skill trees, one for Zook, one for Mayday, and a separate skill tree for the duo itself for team attacks. There's also this sticker system where you can actually add different stickers to Mayday's and Zook's instruments that you find out throughout the game that act as buffs. One sticker may help you increase run speed, while another increases attack power, so it's a bit of a strategy to it. Also, personally, I love how this screen just shows the personality of both characters visually. As you can see, Zook is carefully working on his drumsticks really meticulously, while you can see Mayday over here beating the hell out of her guitar with a big-ass hammer. Little details like this just give the game its charm. Regardless how endlessly creative this game is, there are a few flaws, unfortunately. Based on how little this game was being advertised, this isn't like a big AAA game, and it certainly doesn't have a AAA budget either, and it shows. Most of the issues start to show up during the platforming sections. For one, I ran into a couple of issues with collision detection. A lot of times I will find myself getting stuck on the edge of a platform or just completely going through it entirely. The controls aren't as tight as they could be, especially if this game requires for me to do platforming, and some of the animations could get a bit wonky, to say the least. Also, it could just be me, but sometimes it feels like some of the basic enemies aren't always attacking in occurrence to the beat. Sometimes it feels like they may be slightly off tempo, which is disappointing because that's like the main selling point of the game. However, all of these issues are minor. My biggest issue with this game would be its co-op. So yes, this game does have 2-player co-op, which is pretty cool. Bad news though, it doesn't work the best, especially when it comes to the camera. So this game doesn't have a split screen option where it separates the actual screens to where both players actually have different cameras. No, when you're playing co-op, you share the same camera. And just by me saying that, you could probably imagine what the issues I ran into while playing the game. I found myself dying a lot during the co-op sessions because the camera was too far back, making sure both players were on screen so I couldn't judge the distance of a jump correctly. Plus, if a character dies, the camera jerks back to the default position, so if the other player is trying to do some tight platforming during this camera movement, tough luck. Goodbye depth perception. This was really bad in the Seiyu level and almost impossible in this level with the cars because the platformers were constantly moving. Just based on how poor the camera is during co-op, it seems like this feature was added in as an afterthought, which is really a shame. Plus, since this game only has 5 bosses, 7 if you're counting Tatiana at the end of the game and DK West, it's very short. You can complete it in one sitting. This may be a turnoff for some folks, but I didn't mind it at the time since I was playing Red Dead 2 and Horizon Zero Dawn at the same time, and those games were very long. So I didn't mind a bite-sized experience to break those 2 games up. I also feel like that works to the game's favor though in a sense, because once you get past the novelty of the rhythm-based combat, you start to notice that with other playthroughs just how basic the combat system is, and over time I can really see how that could get very old very fast if the game was any longer. However, this game does offer some level of replayability considering you are given a rank after each boss battle, so you could always face them again to see if you can get a better high score or beat them at a higher difficulty. Plus, I also found out during the research for this video that they added this cool little Christmas update where every boss battle got a cool holiday makeover. They even made new Christmas remixes for each boss battle, which is pretty sick. Lastly, the enemy types you get to fight during the platforming sections are very limited. I think it's only like 3 to 4 enemy types, and they're all just robots. Nothing that is truly unique. However, I feel like they did that probably on purpose because it's probably easier to animate these robots to the rhythm of the beat. I really feel like if this game had a bigger budget and maybe a few more months of polishing, a lot of these issues could have been ironed out and made an already very cool game that much more amazing. What we already have here is pretty freaking cool, and honestly, I would want this to become a new franchise. Someone in the comments section on one of the No Straight Roads videos had mentioned something about this game having DLC and covering other different types of music-based genres, which I'll be totally down for. Not bad for Metronomic's first debut game. Based on what I was able to look up, the studio was founded by the lead game designer that worked on Final Fantasy 15 and a concept artist that worked on Street Fighter 5. I believe from my research they're actually cousins. Not a bad resume. And it seems like the fan base for this game is only growing, so much so that the game's director made a video addressing all of the positive feedback, talking about the bugs the game had at the time of launch, and even giving tips on how to beat one of the harder bosses in the game, DK West. DK West, DK West, he's our man, he's the best. DK West, DK West, man, that song's still stuck in my head. I highly recommend everyone watching this video to go try Straight Roads at the very least. Especially if you like action adventure and rhythm based games. I'm looking at you, person still playing Rez on your PS2 Slim. It's time to take on EDM with the power of rock. And in the words of Mayday and Zook, red light, green light, bonka, junka, shaka laka, bam! I mean, the game is on the Switch, my guy. No excuses.